Hi everyone, this is Nick here. For my demonstration, I wanted to kind of provide a little bit of an insight into what I do for my full-time job, which is teaching people how to operate higher end, expensive CNC laser machines, CNC punch machines. I'll explain what those are. But I wanted to at least go through how to turn on that machine because it's something that every person, when they operate these, has to go through. They have to learn the procedure. So I wanted to at least share some of this at a very basic entry level here for you guys. So at a glance here, this is the machine, or at least one of many machines. This is probably the smallest format one we have. There's a lot of things that can get added to this to make it a much bigger machine, bigger unit, more fully automated. This is more of a manual operation machine here. So what we have here is a machine table. We've got a box frame machine here. It's an enclosed frame, so I would call it a box frame. And inside that box frame is a punching head that's hydraulically or electrically controlled that travels in a certain Y direction. And it comes down, and the punching head comes down, and it makes holes in our sheet metal that we are putting up into the table. So this material is being loaded up into the table here, and on here on the back side are clamps, machine clamps that clamp that material to hold it in place. And that travels in the X direction, left to right, while the punching head moves in the Y direction to find that positioning so it can make holes in certain locations on the sheet. The punching head, in between the clamps here, are tools, and what we have here are certain cartridges that hold tools. That's a certain shape and a certain size. That punching head will go pick that tool up from the cartridge, insert it into the head, and then travel over the sheet and start punching holes into the sheet. And there's lots of different areas for tools to go into. So we have different tools to do different things, essentially to cut our parts out. And companies will buy these machines and make these parts to assemble whatever it is they're making. So they load the material up in there on a flat sheet. They put a series of holes in there. They cut the parts out. And then those finished parts, they go down to a press brake, which is a bending machine. And then the press brake operator puts the part into the machine there, and they bend the corners of the part up into a finished part, and then that part now goes to the powder coating, finish assembly, essentially powder coating or painted, and then those parts, when they're finished painted, they get assembled into a much larger unit, and then that product that they're making now is sold out to the market, or whatever they're doing with it. It may go to a customer, maybe in-house use, but that's what these machines can do. They're very flexible. So when it comes to turning it on, this is our HMI here. This is a close-up of the hard-coded buttons here that we have when the operator gets to turning on the power to the machine. They'll come over here and they have to sequentially kind of do things in a certain order to get the machine to actually turn on itself. It's not just randomly press buttons. So what I do here is I try and at least provide people with a cheat sheet, because a lot of this with this operation is all muscle memory. It's a lot of information to take in a short amount of time. Most people forget certain things of certain procedures. So as long as we have a cheat sheet for the most basic user level here, people end up learning this in a short amount of time to the point where they don't need it anymore. And it just becomes muscle memory, and that's what a lot of this is. So as a recap, when we're actually turning on the machine here, first step here is to ensure that their air supply is on. That is typically located in the back of the machine somewhere, not in this picture. You can't really see it. The customer would provide their own air hose line and connect it down into the machine, and there'd be a power switch for that, and all they'd have to do is turn that on, the valve, at least the air supply for that, so that there's air supply going into the machine as it needs it. That's step one. Step two is we're going to turn the main power switch on, and that is located in the back of the machine here on what is labeled number 1. That's our main power switch cabinet, and there's a power switch on the outside of it. We just flip it on, and that powers up the whole machine. And now we're going to wait for that HMI to load. Now HMI is human machine interface. That's our computer screen that I just showed you over here on the right. That is the computer that we operate off of. So we're going to wait a couple minutes for that to load. Once that loads the interface, you've got step 4 here, which is pressing the red reset button, and you can see that is going to be blinking when there's actual power to the machine. these buttons start to blink, and it's kind of indicating that, hey, I need to be pressed. That's what I tell people. So you're going to press that red reset button. Um, a lot of the machines will populate error messages when the machine turns on. It's very normal to see, and we press that red reset button to actually clear out all of those messages. That's step number one when everything's turned on here. I tell people start from the bottom and work your way up, because that is the procedure that we go here. And then there's going to be a light barrier reset. So a lot of these, all of these machines, you can't see it in this picture here of the actual outline of the machine here, but around the outside perimeter of the machine, there are these light barrier posts that get mounted into the ground. And those light barrier posts have 2 or 3 different mirrors at different heights. And essentially what ends up happening is, as the machine is on, it's a safety light barrier, and it protects the inside of the machine with a certain perimeter there. So if someone was to walk in to that perimeter of the machine and the machine was running, the machine would pause itself, and we call that the light barrier. There are laser beams shooting and reflecting off of all of those mirrors around the entire outside of the machine, and if it sees movement come in, someone walks in and breaks that, well, now the light barrier gets broken and the machine pauses itself. It's a safety feature. So what we have there is a light barrier reset. Those are the 2 foot pedals on the ground here on the machine. You would press the left pedal to reset the barrier, and then the right pedal to acknowledge the pause on the machine, because every time you break that light barrier, it pauses the machine. And then we have turning on the machine drives. This is the button below our little e-stop here. That button that's already illuminated there, that would be a slow blinking button, and that would, you would just single click that, and that would turn on our pneumatics or hydraulics and electronics to the machine. And then there's a little bit of a procedure there in the very last step to reference the machine to the home position. But in a nutshell, this is sequentially step by step. And I could obviously explain this a lot better if I had a real machine in person to show all of this too. But in a short nutshell, this is kind of the procedure that we take to turn on our machines. Thanks for watching, guys.